Welcome to the Kwibuka edition of RTV News. Top of our coverage, according to President Paul Kagame, Rwandans should choose how they want to live and no one else. The head of state reiterated this at the beginning of the 29th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, which took place at Kigali Memorial Center.
Arriving at the Kigali Genocide Memorial, where the bodies of Tutsi who were killed during the genocide, more than 250,000 Tutsi are resting. President Paul Kagame and Madame Jeannette Kagame first placed flowers on the graves, bowed to the innocent victim, and lit the light of hope. In the testimony given by Eric Mwizerwa, it once again gave an image of the cruelty and brutality of the genocide against the Tutsi.
Twageze arambwira turiya ninde namubwira nti ni mama ate yatereka duhagarare turebe noneho turahagarara.
When we got there, he asked me and I said, "This is my mother." They asked my mother and she didn't say anything. She said she wanted to pray and she prayed. A woman came and took the clothes she was wearing and they killed her. The man I was with saw me and I was not crying. He told me that they were killing my mother. And if you are not crying, that means you are dead wood. He said, "You will fall somewhere else." I went down knowing that they were going to kill me. Then I came down, I met a man named Edward and he said to me, "Get out of here, go to my village." That is where I healed all the injuries and no one helped me.
Mwizerwa has survived because of the pride and honor that a Rwandan has, especially in a foreign country, after self-esteem.
Dutanga passport bazi ko urubyiruko rukunda gutoroka barazitwaka twese hanyuma turimo kurya nimugoroba baza muri sare bazana passport yanjye.
When we got there, we gave our passports because they were afraid we would run away because the young people there were likely to run away. When the evening came, they took it back and said, "You Rwandans, take your documents. We really trust you." They made me sit at the honor table. People loved me, kept coming to visit often, and I used that opportunity to open a tourism company. So now when they come to visit, I am the one who serves them.
Wamfashe kwiyubaka nshinga company ya tourism kuko barazaga nkajya handi ariko ninjye wakorera nanjye nkabungukamo.
From the testimony given in his message, President Kagame praised the integrity and forgiveness that continue to characterize Rwandans, stressing that the history Rwandans have gone through has given them the strength to decide how they should live.
Some of those who try to distort the facts of our history it's just because they cannot be ashamed. But we have our lives to live, all of us. And nobody, I want to say nobody, will ever decide for us how to live our lives. We have strength, incredible strength, coming from this history that informs us, that tells us that you should never, never allow anybody else to dictate to you how you live your life.
President Kagame also reminded us that being characterized by doing the right thing and being a good person is better than always calling yourself honest, because if you do the right thing, you are characterized by loyalty, and otherwise, you're always honest. Speaking about those who deny the genocide committed against the Tutsi, the head of the country stressed that those who hate and pervert have no refuge anywhere.
There's no hiding place for you from these very facts of our history. So even those who have their time to say whatever they want to say, they will say it. Maybe they will do many things based on that as well. But the fact is, they cannot find a place to hide.
President Kagame also requested that everyone contribute to condemning those who deny and underestimate the genocide, saying that it is sad that the words of hate which were used for the genocide against the Tutsi are still heard in some places and not far from Rwanda. The 29th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi at the national level, which was attended by various dignitaries, including representatives of international organizations and their countries in Rwanda. Jessica Agasaro, RwandaTV News.
Thank you, Jessica. No one should dictate indeed how Rwandans live. Those are words to live by. Moving on, historians and political analysts have been calling on all Rwandans and the rest of the world to learn from the terrible tragedy that was the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, so that it is never repeated again.
Those who seek to negate the genocide against the Tutsi usually claim that it was caused by the downing of former President Juvenal Habyarimana's plane. But history does not show this to be the reality. We had two children, siblings that we had hidden, and they were killed right in front of the airport. The plane had not been brought down at that time. 3 people were killed close to Habyarimana's home, and the plane had not crashed at that time. The plane was not the cause. Was the plane responsible for Bagosora chasing me around, even before it had been shot down? Indeed, it is not difficult to trace the roots of the genocide all the way back to the colonial period.
Jenoside yakorewe Abatutsi ifite imizi mu bukoroni butubahirije
The genocide against the Tutsi has its roots in the colonial period, when the colonialists failed to honor the agreement they had with the League of Nations in 1922, which was later amended in 1946. In Article 76 of that agreement, Belgium was mandated to give citizens ample freedoms to lead their country with no discrimination based on tribes, gender, language, or religion. On the 13th of December in 1946, Belgium established a law to ensure that this was respected. But that country then went ahead and broke that law by instilling the leadership of Parmehutu that was based on tribal divisionism. And in 1959, that marked the beginning of what would later culminate into the genocide against the Tutsi.
Ubutegetsi bw'irondabwoko bwa Parmehutu aribwo bwabaye intandaro ya jenoside mu mateka y'u Rwanda kuva muri 1959.
The persecution of the Tutsi became widespread after that year, so much so they were killed or ended up fleeing. The harassment was so bad, even children were not spared in their schools. A teacher from another class came in and told me to stand up. He then went on to tell the other students that we are snakes. That is the word he used. During the break period at 10 a.m. that day, I could not play with the other kids because I felt very ashamed of who I am. Meanwhile, the leadership of the country at that time and in the decades that followed was busy preparing for what would end up shocking the world in 1994.
Autodefense civile yaranzwe no gutoza.
A program known as Auto Defense Civile was marked by the training of the country's youth and arming them so that they would be used in the atrocities. On the 9th of July 1991, the country's Minister of Interior, Colonel Ndindirimana, chaired a meeting in the country's military headquarters that brought together military officials, the gendarmerie, and those from the office of the president to assess the implementation of Habyarimana's instructions that the Interahamwe militia be trained in such a way that no one would ever dare to attack Rwanda again. The genocide against the Tutsi that would later result was so terrible that relatives and spouses turned on each other in the bloodbath. The responsibility to stop the atrocities ultimately fell on Rwandans themselves. The fact that foreigners were here in Rwanda, taking their dogs and leaving us to die, is proof that all they care about is their own interests. We as Rwandans, through the RPF Inkotanyi, had to stop the genocide. And yet our genocide was the fastest in recorded history, faster than any other, even the Jewish Holocaust. Ours was the fastest genocide. Today's young people in Rwanda are faced with a different challenge compared to the fight the youth of the RPF Inkotanyi had on their hands in 1994, but it is important nevertheless. Young people must realize that the RPF Inkotanyi fought a very difficult war, and many died or were maimed in the process, so we do not have it tough at all. Our battle is online, and we have the facts and truth on our side, so we must do right by those RPF soldiers who fought for us and tell it as it is. For those who think they can destabilize Rwanda, they need to realize that the RPF is still here and are just as courageous as they were back then. More than 1 million people lost their lives during the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi that lasted for 100 days. Since 2004, the world has commemorated that genocide on the 7th of April in hopes that the lessons learned will prevent other atrocities like that moving forward.
Political party leaders in Rwanda have cautioned their party members, especially the youth, about the dangers of genocide ideology facilitated by technology, and they have urged the international community not to look on as the killings of the Kinyarwanda speakers living in the DRC continue. Take a look. As Rwanda marked the 29th commemoration of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, Rwandan political parties shared messages to comfort the general public, especially during the week of mourning. Political party leaders in Rwanda have called on their political party members, especially the youth, to comfort survivors during the 100 days of commemoration. We ask our party members to be close to survivors, for them to feel that they're not alone. We also ask especially the youth to help them, for example, building houses for soul survivors and helping them with handiwork, because we don't want them to feel alone. The representatives of various political parties in Rwanda reiterated that they carry a different perspective from those that participated in the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and they encourage their members to fight against genocide ideology. They have also called on the international community to fight against the fight targeting Kinyarwanda speakers in the DRC because it mirrors genocide.
tukashimangira yuko tugomba gukomeza gushyigikira politiki y'ubumwe n'ubwiyunge mu Banyarwanda ndetse turwanya n'ingengabitekerezo.
We emphasize the need unifying politics and fight genocide ideology among Rwandans, because if we don't, we can't go back to the bad past. We need to be united and say no to divisive politics so that our children can live in a better country.
Twatanze ko guhakana no gupfobya jenoside yakorewe abatutsi muri iyi minsi byibanda cyangwa se byibanze muri za social media zitandukanye.
The message we give is for you to fight against the genocide ideology on social media. We also highlighted the decision to say never again in Rwanda, but also our neighbors in Congo. We see genocide tendencies targeting Rwandaphone in DRC to avoid the reputation of what happened in Rwanda.
In Rwanda, there are 11 official political parties under the National Consultative Forum for Political Organizations. In more news, foreigners in Rwanda commend the fact that Rwandans have chosen to rise above their grief and strive for unity and development, a lesson they say Africa and the rest of the world should learn from them. This was emphasized in various messages from leaders and the international organizations to Rwandans on this day of reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi.
Is the light. The light.
Rwanda and the world commemorate for the 29th time the genocide against the Tutsi, a peculiar genocide as it was perpetrated by Rwandans. 29 years after, Rwandans continued their journey of unity and reconciliation and striving for the development of their nation. One of the lessons that foreigners in Rwanda state that they learned.
What was happening in 1994, basically you can't compare how Rwanda has grown. We can say that Rwanda, with the good leadership of His Excellency President Paul Kagame, we have seen great development. We have seen Rwanda coming up. For example, the city of Kigali. Basically, if you look at it, those 29 years ago, I was not here, but what I can talk about is about 12 years ago. You'll see that Rwanda from 2011, you have seen the country has grown and very many things have changed. The last 2 days, we have said our President, His Excellency Dr. William Samoei Ruto, the peace that we told him we are experiencing in Rwanda is the same thing that we would wish like to see there back in Nairobi.
And early on, I had to get up at 2 a.m. just to send one email. And now, of course, we're posting all the time. Clearly, the country is moving toward being a far more developed country than it was 12 years ago when there were hardly any cars on the road, and now it's a constant stream of traffic. So the country has made remarkable changes.
The ambassador of China to Rwanda, Wang Senkun, also appreciated the courage of Rwandans to strive out of the dark history.
The disaster for Rwanda about the genocide against the Tutsi, and it's also a disaster for the human. But we are glad Rwanda people stand up again with courage, and they learn to forgive, unite, and transform.
Various countries, ambassadors to Rwanda, different officials from countries across the globe, representatives of international organizations, football teams, and Friends of Rwanda, all provided messages of hope and standing together with Rwandans on this International Day of Reflection on the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. In his message, the Secretary General of the United Nations, Antonio Guterres, pointed out that fighting genocide and crimes against humanity is a shared responsibility. On Twitter, the chairperson of the African Union Commission, Musa Faki Mahamat, reiterated that this union, together with the government of Rwanda, every year commemorates the genocide against the Tutsi with three purposes, namely remembering for avoiding history repetition, uniting with the aim of fighting against genocide against the Tutsi denial, and avoiding hate speeches, as well as partnering as African nations. The Kingdom of Belgium, through its Ministry of Foreign Affairs, stated that on the 70th April, they commemorate the genocide against the Tutsi in Rwanda in 1994. The Federal Republic of Germany stated that they mourn the victims of the genocide against the Tutsi and declare that such a horrendous crime must never be allowed to happen again. Turkey stated that they share the pain of the friendly state, Rwanda, in remembering the genocide against the Tutsi and comment how Rwanda was able to re-establish its social peace. The Secretary General of the Commonwealth, Patricia Scotland, stated that this day is a reminder of our collective responsibilities towards sustainable peace, commending the Commonwealth Chair in person, President Paul Kagame, and the government of Rwanda for rebuilding and unifying Rwanda.
You're still watching RTV News. Some of the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi in Kigali city say even though the genocide affected them in different ways, they have managed to rebuild themselves, and they credit that to the good leadership of this country. Jessica Gasaro now reports.
On this day of the start of the week of mourning, lectures were given to the participants of the 29th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi in Kigali city, focusing on how the genocide against the Tutsi was planned and implemented and the process of rebuilding ourselves. Some of the genocide survivors in the city of Kigali are happy about the long journey they came from since the genocide against the Tutsi, and this will encourage them to be proud of where they have reached and rebuilt.
Aka gace kose kari gatuwe cyane n'abatutsi gusa abenshi.
This whole area was inhabited only by Tutsi. The Hutu lived in the area below, but took time to go up and start attacking people from their houses and killing them one by one under the pretense that their parents had died.
After the genocide, life continued. We went back to school and focused on other various activities. We had children. We have multiplied. Life is going well, and we thank the government because they did everything they could. Among the leaders in Kigali city, they are warning the people to avoid negative words, but to continue to participate in all the commemoration programs.
And there are different programs that will continue, especially on 9th and 10th, because 7 sectors will be remembered on the 9th, and other 3 sectors we have the commemoration on 7th. We continue to encourage our people to participate in the programs, especially the youth, and to participate in the discussions that are being given in the remembrance of the victims so that they know the true history and what we should do to prevent anything that will lead us to genocide ideology.
The 29th commemoration of the genocide against the Tutsi, the theme is Remember, Unite, Renew. Jessica Agasaro, RwandaTV News.
That's my time with you. Our thoughts and prayers remain with the survivors of the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi. I am Isabel Masozera. Do stay with RwandaTV.